translators and interpreters make up 0.63% of Claude usage, and translation makes up 4.5% of ChatGPT usage. Hey everyone, welcome back to Slator Pod. Hi there, Esther.
Hi, Florian.
We're back. Quick episode this week. Next week, it's going to be a guest episode, but today we're just walking you through a bit of news. But first, this week, we had the true honor of awarding the very first Slator Award for the best thesis in MA thesis in specialized translation at the Zurich University of Applied Sciences, which is where I studied 20 years ago, graduated 20 years ago.
Very nice. Who won?
Very nice. Who won? Guy Rudnitsky.
And what did they win?
What did they win?
Just an honor?
A set of steak knives. No. Guy Rudnitsky won, who wrote a thesis on how large organizations manage data security and confidentiality in AI. And award comes with 2,500 Swiss francs in prize money.
Ooh.
Which at this point in time must be like 3,000 US dollars because, the Swiss franc keeps appreciating. So yeah, congratulations to Guy for winning that very first inaugural Slator Award. It was a true honor to be there. It was a great ceremony, happened earlier in the week. I was there with other graduates from that program. Which, from the ZHAV, so Zurich University of Applied Sciences Applied Linguistics Department. And it was very cool to be there, very cool to do the kind of on-stage award ceremony because, back in my day, we didn't get any. We just got the certificate or the.
Do you do the thing with the hats where you wear the,
no hats.
What's it called, mortarboard? No hats?
No, we don't do the hats. We don't do the school...
robe
suits,
thing.
Robe, no. So everybody just, wore whatever they thought was suitable. And no, it was great. Great, quite nicely done, actually. It was about 90 minutes, I guess. So, and there was a band that kind of played throughout, during the breaks. So it was long enough, but also short enough, right? And then there was a bit of what we call in Switzerland, apéro. People having their white wine and their
not
beers.
Not just in Switzerland,
Right. Cool. So again, congrats to Guy. Very proud of this first edition of this award. And next year, it's actually going to be called the MA in Multilingual Communication Management because the Zurich University of Applied Sciences also has to adapt to the age of AI, and I think translation has a bit of a reputational problem out there in the market. So it's tough to get new graduates. So they restructured the program and are now calling it MA Multilingual Communication Management, which is what, in fact, a lot of the graduates will end up doing anyway when they graduate from a translation program. So yeah. Let's move on to the next story. We have Anthropic, the company behind Claude, giving us another set of data. I think we must have spoken about this about half a year ago, right? When they...
Potentially.
Yeah, they had this other thing, this other data point. And now they kept updating their, what they call economic index, the Anthropic economic index. And so they looked at a bunch of job categories. I think it was nearly 1,000 job categories about how people or professionals are using AI. And so among the top 40 categories was translators and interpreters. So this time they didn't look at, like we spoke about last time, like ChatGPT, when they looked at how people are using AI or ChatGPT. Here, Anthropic actually looked at how translators and interpreters are using Claude.
Yeah, okay.
So different.
Okay.
So that, I guess that's
but specifically limited to Claude, right? They haven't done some
Claude.
Sort of like big survey of other LLMs or just limited to Claude. Okay.
Yeah, they got their own, right? So we were joking before recording this podcast that like this is one of the, I guess, stories or things that I want to keep my hot take. I don't
Yeah.
want to go and go down the rabbit hole because it's so much information. So, pardon if there's any, I don't know, lack of nuance here, but I want to keep my hot take because it's a huge piece of research from Anthropic. There's all kinds of nuance and kind of geographic borders and things like
Well, I
that
mean,
that
think how
they
many data points
slice
they
and dice
would
it.
have had to have gone through for this. So yeah, no wonder
Correct.
it's super complex.
It's kind of complex, yeah. So I guess let's just go through the key stats here. So basically, usage share, they're saying that translators and interpreters account for 0.63% of all Claude AI usage. That's a lot, right? Now, if you compare this to the data point we went through last time, which was 4.5% of all ChatGPT conversations were on translation
Yeah.
related queries. So it's interesting. So translators and interpreters make up 0.6%, 0.63% of Claude usage, and translation makes up 4.5% of ChatGPT usage. So again, different categories there. So different methodologies. I was reminded in our piece, different methodologies, not directly comparable,
Yeah.
but still directionally
I wonder
interesting.
if the 0.63%, okay, so that's the number of translators and interpreters using Claude. How many, like, how would you extrapolate that to the entire world population? Like, surely there's not 0.63% of the world's population are translators and interpreters. So maybe we're kind
Absolutely
of
not.
overrepresented on Claude.
100% overrepresented.
Yeah.
Good point. Excellent point. Yeah. That's where we're back with, well, those are large language models, right? So the language use case is likely to be like 10x overrepresented. Because I'm sure if you go down that list, let's do this now. Let me go down that list and see what other categories they have. Of course, now I'm bouncing into the wrong thing. Yeah, anyway, people can look this up. There's all kinds of, I mean, again, there's like 1,000 job categories. So I think you might have touched on that last time. I mean, if you're like a dredge operator or something, I mean, there's not much use right now for Claude.
I suppose the thing it doesn't take into account, though, is people, unlike the OpenAI study, the Claude study wouldn't show other job categories using Claude for translation. So it's only people who identify as translators and interpreters.
That was the last data point we covered, right? Which about half a year ago, which I think it was also in the 2 to 3%
Got it.
category. So
Okay.
that's the thing that you can compare. That's a bit more apples to apples. Like
Yeah.
it looks like translation is about a 2 to 5% usage of
Task
these a task, right? But then obviously professional translators, interpreters make up a much smaller proportion of it. All right, look, we could go through some of the other points here, but like core AI tasks, translators mainly use Claude for core language work, translation with context style rewriting, adapting text, etc. But even some kind of admin tasks like fee discussion, requirement setting, things like that. Delegation versus augmentation. It says, now this is a tricky one. It says that about 70% of frequent translator tasks, 5 out of 7, can be fully delegated to AI, while tasks like proofreading or resolving meaning ambiguities remain more human augmented. Well, that's the last mile, last meter, last foot, whatever you call it, expert in the loop.
I like the bit because I did delve into that a little bit as well. And so it's sort of saying it's got 3 categories of how people are using Claude. So directive, which presumably just means, okay, Claude, do it. And then you take away whatever response you get out. And then they also measure the task iteration, which presumably is something to do with, the humans coming back and re-prompting or saying, okay, do it like this, but change X. In terms of the tone or the style or whatever. So yeah, I thought that point was quite interesting to see, like, for example, with proofreading, editing and revising translated materials, which was one task, the level of task iteration was 42%. So almost half of the people who are asking Claude to proofread, edit and revise are then, by the sounds of it, sort of re-prompting after the first initial output.
There's a final data point that's interesting. Like some of the other roles showed. So transcription, speech to text was apparently 0.07%, but then in a similar bracket would be copywriters at 1.14%, technical writers 1.48%, and creative writers at 0.76%. So yeah, basically indicating tech services, clusters. AI is already very, very, very deeply integrated, of course. And then they also, just a super random anecdote that they also looked at specific geographies. So, for example, they said that California shows disproportionate use for IT-related requests, digital marketing, and translation. So, IT, digital marketing, and translation in California, disproportionate use, and they're speculating, likely reflecting its tech sector, yes, of course, and linguistically diverse population. Makes sense.
Yeah.
All right. Let's abandon Claude by Claude. Again, this was the hot take. They have a ton of stuff on the internet for you to review. Hey, you know who's good at marketing or getting better at marketing? RWS. RWS. So shout out to the marketing and PR team at RWS who posted this week that they translated 1 trillion words in the past 12 months. RWS's language technologies, that is. And they said in the same PR that it's the same as handling the entire digital knowledge base of a Fortune 500 company every single hour. I like that. That's good. That's good PR. 1 trillion words.
It's very good positioning, I think. Well, yeah, in terms of situating it within the Fortune 500 setting, or even just using magnitude of 1 trillion. I want to know the exact number. I don't want to know that it's 1 trillion. I want to know if it's 1 trillion and 3 million or 1 trillion, 3,425,000.
Yeah. Trillion is kind of all the rage these days because NVIDIA is now a 4 trillion company. Microsoft's, 3.5 trillion. OpenAI just, when we're recording this on Thursday, raised at 500 billion valuation. So, why not go out there and say, I've translated 1 trillion words?
I need to go and look up what 1 trillion is because I haven't really been paying attention. Is it 1,000 billion?
Yeah, it's 1,000 billion.
It is? Okay, fine.
Yeah.
All right, good.
Yeah, 1 trillion here, 1 trillion there. Soon you're talking about real money. No. All right. So that's kudos to RWS management. We rarely talk about PR, but this is a good one. Now, somebody who talked about AI translation that you wouldn't expect is Germany's Chancellor, Friedrich Merz, who was visiting Spain and pushed back on the Catalan request to become an official EU language. We must have covered this before in the podcast.
Yeah, we definitely did.
So, it's he basically said, first, the Prime Minister of Spain, what's his name, Pedro Sanchez? I'm not sure. I just have the surname. I think Pedro Sanchez. He said that they reaffirmed Spain's official push for Catalan, Basque, and Galician to regain recognition as EU official languages. But he also acknowledged that that requires unanimity. And then, Friedrich Merz pushed back saying, basically, it's complex. It's adding complexity, and there's resource implication in the EU institution. He mentioned that he was part of the European Parliament, so he knows the translation workload that's generated by adding each new official, like a new official language. And then he suggested that in the medium term, AI will replace most interpreters in the EU language service anyway. So that was the spicy quote that we got from that press conference. And he said that he sees a scenario where everyone will be able to hear and understand any EU language in their own language directly through AI. All right. He did also caution it's not immediate, and this is going to be a medium-term thing. But that's a big thing for a German chancellor to say, towards the EU institutions who employ thousands of linguists. That hey, basically AI is there in the medium term. So we also rarely cover these like AI replacement stories that are floating into our inbox every day. But this was an interesting quote to get there.
Yeah, can't really ignore this.
And also, if you start adding regional languages at the EU level, it kind of, where do you stop? There's dozens and dozens that you could still add. So it becomes somewhat kind of exponential there. All right, so a Google Translate rival is exploring an IPO in the United States. Guess who that could be, Esther?
Who could it be?
Maybe DeepL. It could maybe be DeepL because it's a Google Translate rival. And this is what
Yeah.
I just read is the headline of a Bloomberg article that came out like 2 seconds before we started recording this podcast. So the headline is Google Translate rival DeepL explores an IPO in the United States. I would guess that would be at NASDAQ. What's an IPO? That's an initial public offering. What does that mean? Well, you start trading your shares on the stock market. Interestingly, that story actually was kind of originally covered way back in April by kind of a European-focused startup portal called Sifted. We might have even covered it on the podcast.
I think we talked about it and we were sort of saying, oh, it could be London, could be US.
Good point. Yeah. So maybe now we know that it might be directionally the US, but it's been, what is it, half a year ago? So, and then Bloomberg obviously tends to be quite well informed, right? So somebody called Vinisi Chan and Sweta Gopinath covered this, again, just today on Thursday, October 2nd. They say that DeepL is exploring a potential initial public offering in the US, according to people familiar with the matter who don't want to be named because the discussions are private, yada, yada, yada. And they said that DeepL has held preliminary discussions with potential advisors on the listing. So that would be an investment bank, kind of IBD, an investment bank department that takes companies public. They say that first-time share sale could take place as soon as next year. And here's the kicker. That DeepL would want to seek a valuation of as much as $5 billion in the listing. That's what would that be? 10x RWS or even more. So
right now, yeah, probably more.
Quite the valuation. They also reminded people in the article that DeepL raised $300 million at a $2 billion valuation. Basically cautioning.
Right? That was in early 2024, I think.
Correct. And then the article also goes on to say that, everything is still up in the air, including the listing venue and the timeline, etc. But, if they want to go to the US, they probably have to go to NASDAQ, or they will go to NASDAQ. Then the article also tries to give some context, saying that AI investments continue to surge with booming demand for tools that use the technology that NVIDIA, underlies a lot of this infrastructure. We know that DeepL uses NVIDIA chips straight off the rack. Not much more there. Now, let's go through the hot take. That would be pretty big news for the language industry, would it not?
I mean, not least replacing whoever's left or, delisted from being a publicly traded company over the past couple of years. It's nice to be able to have that sort of level of information and insight into a company when they release, the statements and the updates that they are required to.
Correct.
Probably less in the US, though, right? The sort of level of disclosure.
Oh, it's a lot, especially in what's called the S1 that you have to file with the regulator before you go public. So those are really long, lengthy documents. Also, remember back in the day when Lionbridge was still public, they had to do a lot of info. So there's a lot of info coming out of the US. We just don't know anymore because there isn't anything that we cover specifically that's listed in the US. So that will be pretty interesting. Maybe some of the AI, not the AI, some of the interpreting companies are still listed, but yeah. So this would be, again, major news. I think an exit, it would be an exit for some of the existing shareholders that have been invested with DeepL for close to a decade now. So that would be quite nice for them to exit, right? That's probably 100x, 200x, who knows? Obviously, massive additional firepower in terms of money for DeepL, really accelerating their enterprise move. Also a very important signal for the language AI kind of industry generally, and maybe even the broader AI space, because I haven't seen many of these some of the newer AI companies go public. Actually, very, very few. Unlike
it's too early, really.
Is it though?
Right?
I mean, think about. For those who remember, like the late '90s, right? The whole .com. There was a ton of companies going public. Now, I off the top of my head, I can't name a single AI company that has gone public. Let me just remind people of the process. First, you hire an advisor. That's what apparently DeepL has already done. Investment bank, lawyers, auditors, etc. Then you move and file an S1 with the SEC. If you do list in the US, that's where we would get all the juicy information from. So we should set some type of alert. Then you do a roadshow. You try to make people get people excited about buying the shares to exit at a good IPO at a good price. You price it, and then you start trading. So let's see.
Easy.
Easy as pie. Only costs I don't know, a couple dozen million to do that. I'm not sure. Actually, used to be kind of on a tangent. Used to be one of the biggest client segments back in when I
IPO
worked.
work. Yeah.
IPO work, tons
Yeah,
of
yeah.
IPO work.
We had a lot
We
of that as well.
translated hundreds and hundreds of IPO
Filings,
prospectuses,
right? Yeah.
filings and stuff like that into Chinese when everybody wanted to go public in Hong Kong. So, well, maybe they're trying to drum up some of the excitement on the DeepL side. They unveiled like a marketplace for DeepL API solutions. Do we want to go into that just briefly?
Yeah, I think so. DeepL Marketplace, that is the launch that they've announced recently. So they say Marketplace is a centralized platform. The idea being that it's a central hub for apps and integrations. The thing that stuck out to me is that not only is it a hub for apps and integrations that have been built on DeepL's technology, so not only apps and technology that is DeepL proprietary, but also apps from partners. So yeah, got a number of them on there already. I've read up on a couple that were, a few of them were actually mentioned in the press release, I think. So they've got within that marketplace, not just sort of translation and language AI apps, but or sort of classic sort of translation management technology, but they've got content, more like content management type text and app as well. But the ones that were familiar to me were Console Tech, Phrase, obviously CloudWorks, WeGlot, Robert, Gridley, that we've talked about a bit, and MemoQ. So all accessible via the DeepL marketplace. And apparently there seems to be a button where you can kind of click and apply to become a partner if that's something you would like to do within the marketplace.
Yeah, and in that press release, they don't refer to translation AI or language AI. They now call themselves DeepL, a global AI product and research company.
Yeah.
That's quite a change. So going broader.
They might. I mean, all of the coverage of the IPO stuff is still translation AI. So might take a little bit of time.
Yeah, I'm trying to go
for
broader.
Google Translate rival. I mean, if that's the headline, right?
Yeah, that's a tough one to get rid of.
It's going to stick for a bit.
Yeah, positioning. All right, and then finally, if you're a global AI product and research company, you need a chief product officer. And so they also announced that they hired Gonzalo Gayolas as their new chief product officer. And he has quite the background in tech, works for a low-code company called, let me pull this up. What was it called? OutSystems. Yeah, that's right. So 10 years at OutSystems and a couple other things. So yeah, welcome Gonzalo Gayolas to the world of language AI and language solutions. And
global AI
good timing.
Research.
Good timing.
Yeah.
Hope you get some shares. So you participate in the IPO. All right, let's move on. I do want to talk briefly, but really briefly, about all these AI live speech translation launches. Shall we?
Yes.
Where to begin? Zoom. So Zoom brings AI live speech translation in-house because so far they've been just basically you were able to plug in your solution and Zoom featured it on whatever marketplace they had, right? But now they're bringing it in-house. I mean, we've been covering Zoom's efforts there on the research side for a while, and now they're actually making it productized. I don't think it's available yet. I think it's going to be launched in December.
Didn't they say? Yeah.
Okay. And then, I mean, we did speak about it, the Apple AirPod launch, then Google Translate's live translation feature, the Microsoft AI interpreting API, which we spoke about last time. Then, companies, even startups like Palabra AI raising money. And then, Mark Zuckerberg, Meta, was on stage with his kind of live translating Ray-Bans.
Yeah.
I didn't really follow this. I don't know if it really worked live on stage, but must have.
I didn't watch.
A couple other things actually failed, like live failed, and that got him, on the one hand, some ridicule, on the other hand, some respect from developers. Like he's on stage and it doesn't work, so it's not like a canned presentation.
Yeah.
Okay, but then we came across a post by a Korean news outlet that actually tested Samsung and Apple real-time translation, and they said that the barriers persist. The test reveals delays and mistranslations of industry terms, raising questions about full language barrier removal. Well, those questions about full language barrier removal have persisted for quite some time, and I don't think they're going to go away just yet. Yeah, I think we must have linked to it in our daily newsletter. I'm not going to go through this in detail, but yeah, so big push in AI live speech translation. I think now we're getting to the point where it's going to have an impact on LSIs going forward. So will be interesting to see, in our coverage maybe early next year what some of that impact is, how many kind of enterprise clients or users are moving to some of these products for day to day.
Yeah, no, it'll be interesting to see how that sort of shakes out when you start to see some of the companies like reporting revenues, for example, or whether it will take some time, like a couple of years, whatever, to kind of trickle through.
Especially something like the Microsoft AI interpreting API, that should be a big competitor for some of these LSIs. But all right, we were in Korea. We're staying in Korea. There was a small deal, I think. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so we've just got a roundup of a few different, acquisitions, partnerships, etc. So the first of those being Bering Lab, based in Korea, as you said, buying Intersphere, also based in Korea. So this is news that Bering Lab acquired Intersphere. Typically, Bering Lab has been so first, I mean, it's got its own AI translation, proprietary technology, but it's been very much focused on the. I think that was a combination of focus and specialized. Anyway, focus, a new word.
Localized.
Focused on legal and patent services. So now I think with the acquisition, it will see the technology, Bering Lab generally sort of expanding its technology through to a wider range of verticals. Intersphere, I mean, you mentioned Samsung in the last bit, but so clients of Intersphere include Samsung, other well-known names in Korea like Hyundai as well. So it's got seemingly pretty strong sort of market presence in Korea, which is why Bering Lab was particularly interested, sort of one of the larger LSIs in the Korean market. Bering Lab itself received some seed funding. I think it was couple of years ago, maybe 18 months ago, from a company called Naver Corporation or Naver Corporation.
Naver, it's
Naver.
Sorry to pause you there for a second. I think that's the Korean search engine. That's kind of Korea's Google.
Okay.
It's a huge one.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Naver.
Okay.
Yeah.
So part of their expansion strategy now then is to, on the one hand, scale vertically, which would be, what they're doing through this acquisition into other highly regulated sectors such as life sciences, finance, etc. And then also geographically, presumably starting with sort of neighboring and major Asian markets as well. So yes, a smallish deal. Now we have 30 full-time employees within the
whole company
organization. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Good luck to Bering Lab. And then we go to the world of Hollywood production.
Hollywood production.
Yeah.
Iyuno, which had its roots in Singapore, didn't it? So
they had their roots in Singapore. Yeah.
Now I think they're very much sort of US, Hollywood.
Yeah, with SDI, right? With the SDI acquisition, they're firmly in the Hollywood Burbank
for sure.
area.
Yeah, so news from Iyuno and also a company called MPS that they're going to be forming an alliance for the partnership, essentially, for the creation of localization pipeline. So help their customers produce end-to-end film localization. MPS stands for Motion Picture Solutions, which is a theatrical production focused LSI, which is based in the UK. The Iyuno said that the decision to partner with them is driven by client feedback. So the customers are looking for more agile supply chain. They say is more contextually aware. Essentially, I think the two companies are going to be plugging some gaps in each other's service lines. That's how I think David Lee, the CEO of Iyuno, described it. So on the one hand, you've got MPS, which is an employee-owned company. It was looking to expand its footprint within the US, as lots of people want to do, and also enhance its localization capabilities. Whereas Iyuno, what it gets from MPS is theatrical mastering, digital cinema QC, packaging, fulfillment. So it's a lot of kind of post-production
I might be wrong,
aspects.
but isn't that like Zoo's kind of line of business also, other than localization, the whole packaging, fulfillment, mastering thing?
It definitely was at some point. I haven't been so close to their sort of
Yeah.
results recently to dig into what kind of portion of their revenues that would still represent. But yeah, definitely the digital packaging was sort of a big offering there
Okay.
at one point. But I think it's, like Deluxe would offer, the other sort of big major media localization provider would also offer these sort of like end-to-end services that kind of come after, downstream from localization. And then, in return, we have MPS. It says that they have got some studio and office space in Iyuno's Burbank facilities. So there you go. They've hopped across the pond to be in the US with Iyuno, their new partners.
And then we got one more, a company called Testronic. I think they've been around for a while, and they somehow restructured, got some additional funding. Maybe just tell us the highlights there.
So it's been around for a while, I think 20 plus years, coming up for 30 years maybe. But it's Testronic is, for those who don't know, it's an outsourced provider to the gaming industry. So similar to Keywords, for example, they provide everything from like game testing, compliance. But I mean, obviously, in terms of our area of interest, they provide game localization. Apparently also, which I didn't know, they provide some sort of like film and TV services in a similar way, but through a partnership with a company called Giant Worldwide. But the news essentially is that on the one hand, they've got a new funding partnership with this private equity firm called TDC. And then as part of that, or I think as a continuation of what they call a strategic restructuring that's been in progress for a while now. So the funding itself was announced, I think, just a couple of weeks ago in mid-September, although it was finalized back in July, and will help to continue with the restructuring plan. They say TDC, the private equity firm, is now Testronic's main financial partner, working alongside HSBC, who's also presumably an investor. In terms of the restructuring, so what are they actually doing? Testronic, I think in 2025 so far, they've sold a couple of divisions. So they've sold off this Curve Games division. They say they've closed studios in Madrid and Belgrade. And now they're also actively expanding operations in Manila. And they say, so the CEO, who's been in the role, I think 6 months or so, Sharon Bailey Bell, says they're going to be focusing obviously on delivering services that they excel at, which includes QA testing and localization. So that's good for all of us. And obviously sort of focusing on some of these centers of excellence. It seems like Manila is a big focus. They say Manila is a key growth area because on the one hand, they've got this sort of young, tech-savvy and English proficient population, and then it's also a burgeoning technology market. So that's what they're doing.
Testronic, all right, back on our radar. Hey, so I want to close on a piece of good news. Focalized is actually a word. So I looked it up.
There you go. I got flustered for nothing then.
ChatGPT insists that focalize is a real word, but unless you're in a technical or academic context, focus is usually the clearer, more natural choice.
I think it was one of those calc situations, because in French they have like focaliser.
Voila. Focaliser.
Sure.
Okay.
Because the coffee hasn't kicked in.
And we're going to go back and focalize on our daily tasks now, having wrapped up this podcast. So, we'll be back next week. Thanks.